bells toll, the bagpipes and trumpets play, and families mourn as the world respects, reflects, and remembers a milestone, September 11th, 2024. Also, storms strike, Hurricane Francine strengthening and about to slam the Gulf Coast, and a campaign shift after meeting on the debate stage for potentially the only time. Where do Kamala Harris and Donald Trump go from here?
From ABC-7 New York, this is Eyewitness News Extra Time.
And good evening on this 23rd anniversary of the day the world changed. I'm Josh Einiger, and we do begin with reflections on this September 11th. Today, like every anniversary for the past 23 years, people here and around the country paused to reflect and remember and vowed to never forget. It is a hallowed day, nowhere more so than in our city, consecrated by the countless numbers of people with stories of where they were 23 years ago today, and how the attacks affected them, their loved ones, and their communities. The ceremony this morning, once again, so powerfully and profoundly emotional. The solemn recitation of nearly 3,000 names interrupted only by the tolling of a bell to mark the precise times the planes hit the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, along with when each of the Twin Towers fell. The anniversary comes at an especially fraught time in politics. Today, President Biden, former President Donald Trump, and Vice President Kamala Harris stood together in Lower Manhattan. Trump and Harris shook hands just hours after their face-off at a contentious debate last night. And tonight, the annual Tribute in Light shines again for the victims. You could see the blue lights shining straight up in Lower Manhattan. You could see them for miles around on this gorgeous night in the very spot where the Twin Towers once stood. Our coverage of this solemn day begins with Eyewitness News reporter Anthony Carlo.
The tolling of that bell marks a day that changed Nicole Kua's life forever.
It's 23 years later, but it still feels very much like yesterday.
She was just 13 when her mother, Grace, went to work on a sunny day just like this and never came home to their family.
Had she just missed the train, we wouldn't be here. But my mom was a very strong person, and I know she's always with us watching.
Nicole every year watches as the flag is carried, and others, just like herself, hold up photos of their loved ones in Lower Manhattan. Wanda Ortiz's husband was also killed on 9/11 when their daughters were just babies.
He would have made an awesome father, and I guess living vicariously through his eyes is what I do.
Emilio Pete Ortiz.
A total stranger read the name of Wanda's husband at the annual tribute, bonded by the same pain at Ground Zero.
This is our sacred hallowed grounds. My brother was never recovered. So, I like to say how do we pay tribute to those lost? Let's become that people of September 12th, the day after.
That same spirit of unity brought even the greatest political opponents together, even for just a moment, as the torch was passed to a new generation.
Uncle Joey, although we never met you, you will always be remembered.
Nearly 3,000 people were killed that day in the terror attack on the World Trade Center, 343 of them FDNY members. All these years later, they're still damaged.
We're focused now not just on them, but on the 370 members of our department who have passed away from illness related to the rescue and recovery effort.
And another testament to the legacy. Over the years, we've met many first responders who chose to become first responders because of the sacrifice their parent or relative made. In Lower Manhattan, Anthony Carlo, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
Nearly 500 of those killed in the World Trade Center lived on Long Island, and this morning their loved ones paid tribute at an annual memorial service at Point Lookout in Nassau County. Eyewitness News reporter Kristen Thorne was there.
The skies were crystal clear over Point Lookout, the same as they were 23 years ago. But people's lives, all our lives, have never been the same.
This is your dad?
It's my dad.
And what his name?
William Steckman.
Where was he when this happened?
He was on the 104th floor on the North Tower.
He was an engineer for NBC.
We used to come to this beach every year with him growing up, so that's why we come here. The ceremony means more to us.
So proudly
The annual ceremony continues to draw hundreds of people.
I'm glad to see that people are still here remembering.
9/11 still claims victims even today, with people dying of 9/11 related illnesses.
Our wall of remembrance started with probably about 2,500 names. This year, we're going to be over 4,000. And those are the legacy of the lives we continue to lose every single year in the town.
The crowd heard from Dawn Kirchner, whose husband Ronnie, a father of two, died 2 years ago from dementia and lung ailments. Ronnie was with the FDNY and spent half a year on the pile.
I cannot fathom the pain of losing a loved one in an instant. No insight, no preparation, no goodbye. Stemming from that same day, yet in direct opposition, Luke and Ava and I lost Ronnie ever so slowly. Day by day, month to month, year to year.
What unifies them and everyone affected by 9/11 is something the terror of that day can never and will never destroy: love. At Point Lookout, Kristen Thorne, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
The memorial pools at the 9/11 Memorial downtown has fast become one of the city's biggest tourist attractions. It is a sacred site, though, and maintaining the place that honors nearly 3,000 people is a labor of love for a team of maintenance professionals who work every day to keep it perfect. Eyewitness News reporter Jim Dolan has their story.
The sound of the falling water muffles the clang of the city that surrounds it. A stand of swamp-white oak trees, each one numbered and doted on, shelter this sacred space. And 24 years on, families still leave flowers in the sturdy plates where the names of the dead are seared in bronze and lighted from below. It is breathtaking.
It's really moving.
It reminds you of how big it was, how big the trauma is also for all the people that are staying here now and living with this.
But when the tourists leave and the sun sets, the dramatic waterfall in the pools of the 9/11 Memorial slows and draws to a trickle. And a busy army of workers takes over. Overnight, the bronze plates, worn by the constant tussle of visitors, are refurbished by artisans with a torch in one hand and a touch-up brush in the other. And 30 feet below, others pull out hoses the length of a city block to clean the pools of debris and leaves that fall in. They work here in reverent silence, keeping this national storehouse of grief and hope immaculate.
It's not just a bronze plate and a big pool. It's a place for them to come and reflect on how they move forward.
And that's why this simple, almost mundane work is so important for family members, for anyone who comes here to mourn or to pray. This has to be perfect every day. It's important work maintaining this special New York space where heartache and hope together bind a nation.
This is the most fulfilling job that I've ever had.
In Lower Manhattan, Jim Dolan, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
And now to the survivors. 2,753 people were murdered at Ground Zero, but more than 14,000 escaped and survived and have had to live all these years with some form of guilt. Eyewitness News reporter Kimberly Richardson has one survivor's story.
The September 11th Memorial here in Eisenhower Park is a place for deep reflection, where we found Scott Diamond.
All of a sudden, I hear a whooshing sound and an explosion.
8:46 that morning, Scott was at his desk inside the North Tower when the first plane hit the building.
And I'm seeing debris raining down, flames, and I'm seeing flames and smoke coming out of the tower.
In all of the years after the terror attack, now 23, Scott has never been to the service held in Lower Manhattan. Like thousands of others who made it out alive, the emotional scars are deep. He's now part of what he considers a forgotten group.
I don't want to take anything away from the people who lost their lives, or the first responders, or any of those heroes. But We lived through it too.
We'll never forget taking the elevators to the 44th floor of Tower 1, then the endless stairs. At one point, an announcement saying the building was secure, everyone could return to their desk. But Scott says he couldn't. Too many people were walking down. Then, 9:03 a.m.
The building shook and the lights briefly went out, and the first thing that came to my mind is I ain't going back to my desk.
Scott made it out, and while riding home on the LIRR, a flood of emotions took over.
Worry about the country, worried about what my family knew or didn't know.
Scott says he hopes no one will ever forget the cowardly, evil attack. Remember how this country came together.
They need to work towards never letting something like that happen again.
Kimberly Richardson, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
And it's an especially rough day for us here at Channel 7 as well, because 9/11 has caused us to lose 2 members of our family. Eyewitness News engineer Don DeFranco was at his post on that morning of September 11th, manning our transmitter site atop the North Tower. Our station had just installed a new digital transmitter on the roof, and Don, who could make or fix just about anything, was in charge. The moment the plane struck the tower, he called the station to say there was a problem, and we never heard from him again. Don was just 43 years old. He was a hard worker, smart, funny, and a gentle soul. We miss him, and our thoughts are always with his family. And then there's Todd Pierce, our dear friend and colleague and brilliant photojournalist. Todd passed away last year after a long battle with a 9/11-related cancer. Todd arrived at Ground Zero just after the buildings fell, and he'd spend weeks downtown covering the aftermath. More than 20 years later, he developed a form of lung cancer linked to the toxic dust he breathed all those years ago. Todd covered some of the biggest and most important stories of our lifetime. His creativity and immense talent, his sense of humor and wide smile, and most importantly, his big heart touched us all. Today, we're thinking about his wife, Shelley, and their daughter, Sarah, who is now a freshman in college. Todd was just 57 years old, and we miss him every day. And unfortunately, Sarah and Shelley are far from alone in their grief, because the 9/11 death toll rises every day. More than 6,000 people have died from 9/11-related diseases linked to the toxic smoke and chemicals and dust at Ground Zero. Last week, the names of 32 additional fallen firefighters were added to the World Trade Center Memorial Wall. 360 members of the FDNY have now died of 9/11-related illnesses, and that is 17 more firefighters killed since 9/11 than the number who died on the day itself. And as we continue with Eyewitness News Extra Time on this very solemn night, we are going to shift gears and talk about a dangerous storm hitting the south. Hurricane Francine is smashing into the Gulf Coast. We will go there live. And a much different story here at home. Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg will have the exclusive AccuWeather forecast as we look at the memorial pools on this September 11th. Developing right now, Hurricane Francine is spinning toward Louisiana and strengthening to a Category 2 storm that could bring deadly storm surge, widespread flooding, and destructive winds to the northern Gulf Coast. ABC's Ike Ajaji is live in New Orleans tonight. Ike, it looks calm where you are, but I guess that's about to change.
That's right, Josh. We're in the middle of those outer bands right now. We've been seeing time on and time off of heavy winds and heavy rain. And essentially what we're seeing right now is officials are saying now is the time to find a safe place and stay there. Hurricane Francine making landfall this afternoon in Louisiana.
Now is the time to begin to stay off of the roadways, stay home, and stay put.
Residents bracing for potentially deadly storm surge, destructive winds, and widespread flooding.
It's coming no matter how I feel. I'm just praying everybody stays safe and the properties stay as well as it can be.
A mandatory evacuation in effect for Cameron Parish and a curfew in place for Morgan City. While many businesses are boarded up and closed, one gas station owner says he has enough gas to stay open through the storm.
We're the only place out here for the sheriff's department, the fire department. We have gas. All the locals depend on us.
400 state troopers standing by across the state to respond to any storm-related issues. The Louisiana National Guard also headed to coastal areas.
We are now no longer in the prepare for a hurricane. We are now in the respond for a hurricane.
Volunteers coming together to fill sandbags to protect businesses and homes across the area.
For days now, we've been prepping for the storm, getting different things together. We have high water vehicles, boats, you name it. Extra deputies out on patrol right now until this is concluded.
People also stocking up on groceries and gasoline. President Biden approving a disaster declaration for the state. Now, conditions here in New Orleans are deteriorating. Tropical storm warnings are in effect further east from here in places like Mobile, Alabama, and Biloxi, Mississippi. And essentially what we're seeing right now is the effect of tornadoes and flooding still being a threat in those areas, Josh.
Ike, of course, New Orleans was famously devastated by Katrina. How concerned are officials about the low-lying status of the city and what flooding could do, and how are people there staying safe?
Well, Josh, officials here, they are not messing around. They know exactly what this area can turn into given a storm of this strength, which is why they've already been working since yesterday and the days before to mitigate any kind of storm surge or any kind of destruction that we can see from Hurricane Francine. So they've essentially been issuing a lot of warnings, shelter-in-place warnings for several of the parishes around here. They've issued tornado watches, obviously flood warnings, and what they're also issuing are shelter-in-place orders. Ever since this morning, they've been telling people to find a safe place and stay there because this storm, as you can see right now, without a moment's notice, can change from calm to essentially what you're seeing now, which is heavy winds and heavy rain, sideways rain, which is why those officials are making sure everyone is staying safe because, as you know, as the sun goes down, this storm is only going to intensify.
Absolutely, and there is an art to figuring out when you're a reporter and a TV crew how to stand and how to stay safe. Walk us through a little bit how you're able, and we're looking at this image behind you. It is actually just as you speak, it's starting to whip up. How are you dry?
Well, that is a good question. You know, a lot of the times what we do here is we do like to get into the elements and show you exactly what we're dealing with. But because of how dangerous this is, we like to actually make sure that we can show you what's going on, but make sure we're safe. That's why we're actually in a parking garage right now, very high up. If you could take a look, you can see that it's essentially providing us some kind of safety from these conditions, but you can still see that the water is still being pushed in here. The wind is pushing this rain into all sorts of directions. One time it'll be coming in here, another time it'll be going the opposite directions. But in other times, you know, we really do try to be safe. I know there will be times when we go outside. Of course. We want to make sure that there's a wall in front of us just in case debris starts flying all over the area. So there's a lot of safety precautions we take. Obviously, we'll want to show all the viewers there watching at home the conditions here, but we also want to make sure that we're safe. So it does look like sometimes we do things dangerous, but I promise you, we're going to be safe.
You got to stay safe, and you know what? You also got to keep that camera safe because without the camera, there's no point in being there because you can't send back the pictures. Ike, you and your crew, you're doing great work, and good luck and stay safe tonight. That's ABC's Ike Ajaji reporting live in New Orleans tonight. And we're going to shift gears now to the exclusive AccuWeather forecast. A big storm in the south, but beautiful weather here in New York. Here's Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg.
Cat 2 hurricane, more strengthening right before it came ashore. Here, so different. Just absolutely beautiful as we look downtown, and this is the view you want tonight for the tribute in light. Remember, those really bright beams will go 4 miles into the sky and can be seen in a 60-mile radius around New York City, and the visibility will be fantastic tonight. 88 7,000-watt bulbs in those 48-foot squares. 73 degrees, southeasterly wind at 3. So that's a difference. A little light wind off the water will help the humidity creep up enough. The only problem with that is we'll see more fog in the morning. By the way, good news with the increasing humidity and the firefighting going on in Ocean County. 100% containment with the wildfire in Ocean County. All right, there is a look at Francine. See that blow up at the last second there? Those are thunderstorms along the eye wall. Became a Cat 2 with 100-mile-per-hour winds. The worst is actually onshore. There's the eye coming onshore just to the south-southwest of Morgan City. You see the heaviest is going toward New Orleans. 1 to 2 inches, or at least maybe even 1 to 3 inches per hour. Some twisting and turning, the threat of tornadoes, the coastal flooding that's already happening. It is ugly down there now. Radar estimates up to 5 inches of rain already across parts of southern Louisiana, about 2 inches in the New Orleans area. The tornado watch will go through late evening. Here's the track. Of course, onshore in southeastern Louisiana till after midnight, then to a tropical storm. storm, depression, and even a remnant low by later tomorrow night becomes basically a tropical rainstorm that soaks the Mississippi and Tennessee river valleys. So Francine made landfall along the Louisiana coast. For us, it's tranquil. A pleasant pattern will last for 5 days or more. The extended forecast, the next chance of rain may return on Tuesday. Some trends have the rain even staying to our south through midweek next week. Right now, it's all about high pressure and clear sky, and just that light onshore wind means that some patchy fog will start to show up after about 2 or 3 in the morning. Could be locally dense first thing in the morning. By 10 o'clock, it should be lifted. We go back to sunshine. I think we'll go through that same routine as we go into Friday. Here's a look at temperatures tomorrow morning. 50s most suburbs, low 60s in the city with a patchy fog, upper 40s well north and west. By afternoon, we're once again in the upper 70s to near 80. The beaches will be in the 70s. Rip current risk is low. Bonus beach weather right through the upcoming weekend. 62 tonight, mainly clear. That fog coming in late. What a gorgeous day tomorrow. Around 80, gorgeous again with early fog giving way to sunshine. Tomorrow night down to 65, mainly clear, and once again a resurgence of fog. It's a pretty easy forecast. I mean, just some subtle changes. Some morning fog the next couple of days. That could be a story right into the weekend as well. Low 80s by day with more humidity and milder nights. It just feels more summery. More of the same on Monday. I'm going to throw in that chance of a shower later Tuesday and into Wednesday, but there's some indications those showers may get up to maybe Cape May, maybe even just stay to our south. I'll watch it closely if that's the case.
Lee Goldberg with the accurate weather forecast. Thanks, Lee. And as we continue with Eyewitness News Extra Time this Wednesday night, another fork in the road to the White House. After last night's dramatic debate, what happens next? We'll take a closer look. And now to the road to the White House. Just hours after their first face-to-face meeting, Vice President Harris and Donald Trump were back together today, but this time in a much different setting. They set politics aside to mark the 23rd anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. But last night, things weren't so cordial, as ABC's M. Wynn reports from Washington.
Today, in a rare public appearance together, President Biden, alongside both presidential candidates, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, all gathering in New York to commemorate the 23rd anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. The two nominees meeting for the first time just 1 day before, walking onto the debate stage. In a power move, Harris initiating a handshake.
Kamala Harris, let's have a good debate.
Have fun.
Thank you.
Harris set out to hold Trump accountable for his record, blaming him for the new abortion restrictions across the country, saying what he is putting women through is unconscionable.
Donald Trump certainly should not be telling a woman what to do with her body.
The former president refusing to commit to veto a national abortion ban.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't.
Trump hitting Harris on immigration.
They're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done.
What we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem.
Trump kept going back to immigration and the southern border. It is one of the strongest issues he has. On the other side, you saw Harris with some of her stronger moments talking about abortion rights in very emotional and visceral terms.
On the economy, Harris touted a plan for tax breaks for small businesses and a first-time homebuyer credit for down payments. Trump had won the coin toss and chose to give the closing statement.
They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it?
Both presidential candidates will be right back out on the campaign trail this week. Tomorrow, Harris heads to North Carolina, Trump to Arizona. In Washington, M. Wynn, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
And that wraps up this edition of Eyewitness News Extra Time. I'm Josh Einiger. We'll leave you with a live look of Lower Manhattan as we commemorate the solemn anniversary of 9/11, a roundup of today's memorial events tonight on Eyewitness News at 11. For now, thanks for joining us. Have a good night.